It's a hard pill to swallow. You know that the people that you love don't want your love, they want your suffering because they feed off it. They don't know what love is. They've had traumatic pasts, but that's not your burden to carry. It's easier to let go when you know that you have been carrying their burdens for some of us for most of our lives. And after doing our best, which is trying so hard to help them, to love them in different ways, in ways that you hope they might understand. But they don't understand love. They only understand suffering. They understand trauma. They understand abuse. And that is why it's become such a habit that they feed off of your suffering. They feed off negative energy. And when you've tried your best, thinking of every way you could think of to help them, to make them feel loved, and nothing worked, then it's time to give that love to yourself. You know, whatever you've been doing to try to help them, give that to yourself. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people romanticize romantic love. They think that they should sacrifice for the person that they love. They think they should suffer for the person that they love, thanks to Hollywood movies. When it comes to platonic love, you know, between family members, the word sacrifice is often heard. People talk about sacrifice, but there is no, you know, unless you're sitting on your husband's funeral pyre waiting for them to strike the match, there is no such thing as sacrifice. Because when you say give up something or do something at your own expense for the benefit of someone that you love, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. You still find joy in it. As long as it's not too detrimental to you, as long as the impact on you is not too negative, and as long as you find joy in doing something for someone and not expecting anything in return, whether it's financial or emotional, there is no such thing as a sacrifice. People use the word sacrifice to glorify themselves. You know, it's like a martyr syndrome. And they keep an accounts book on how much they have sacrificed for you. The other day at the mall, I saw a little girl in a tutu, you know, dancing, doing her ballet moves in the middle of the mall, you know, so joyfully dancing. And I heard what I think is her father, you know, nearby saying, she doesn't know how much I sacrificed for her. And it made me cringe. And I hope that that child didn't hear it, and I hope she never ever hears about his sacrifice. Can you think of how it makes the girl feel if she heard it? You know, she's only about 5 or 6. I just hope she never hears it. You see, that is the problem with people, with many people. They go through guilt if they don't do something that they think they ought to do. You know, this is very cultural, especially in Asian culture, where you're supposed to do this for a family member, where you're supposed to do so many things, or else, you know, you're a bad daughter or a bad son or a bad husband or a bad wife. All this is rubbish. It's rubbish because it keeps us trapped in society's expectations of us. And the cycle just continues because, well, I did it for my parents. Why can't you do it for me? You know, I could say that to my children. I could expect that from my children. At the end of the day, we only have one job. We only have one duty. And yes, it is a duty. It's a duty to learn how to love ourselves. It's a duty to get to know ourselves. And if everyone did that, the world is cured of all its problems overnight. You know, all these things can be solved if everyone just learned to love themselves. Greed is not necessarily strictly about greed. Greed is about an emptiness that someone needs to fulfill. Anger, violence, the lack of compassion and kindness, all that just stems from an emptiness within them. And some people are either lashing it out on other people or making it other people's responsibility to make them happy. Just don't sacrifice anything for anyone if you don't feel like it, if you don't feel the need to do it. So, in the case of the narcissist, they feed off negative energy, they feed off anger and sadness. I know it's sad, but there's no way we can help them because they don't help themselves. You know, everything I've read about narcissists, everything I've watched about narcissists is that they don't see that there's a problem with them. So why should they help themselves? Why should they seek help? Everything is your fault. Everything is someone else's fault. They are incapable of self-reflection. And when someone is incapable of self-reflection, there is nothing you can do for them. So you give everything that you have tried to give to them, you give it to yourself. That's a lot more satisfying. That's a lot more progressive. Haven't you noticed that they're only happy when there's a tragedy? Haven't you noticed that they're happy talking about other people's misery, about all the negativity? They feed off it. This is just so damaging for our soul because we don't want to feed off negative energy. You know, I'm not suggesting that we are, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. I'm not talking about toxic positivity where, I'm not talking about living in a land of unicorns and rainbows. Like, I got into an accident the other day and, a truck ran over my leg and now I have to amputate my leg. Yay, that's all right. I'm happy with that. What's losing a leg? And I'm not talking about that because, in my previous video, I talked about acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is very different from accepting everything in a blindly positive way. Acknowledgement is really looking at the truth of the matter and then deciding what you do next. How are you going to overcome it? And as to acceptance is not about accepting abuse and letting them continue. Acceptance stops at, I accept that you have done this to me. I accept that I was your victim, but I'm no longer your victim. I accept my past and now I will walk forward. I will move forward. That is what acceptance means. Acceptance is not, oh, I accept the way that you are, that you can't help it. So, continue beating me, continue abusing me, whether it's financially, physically, or emotionally. No, acceptance is about accepting what has happened, but not accepting that it's going to continue. Okay, because, why? Because it's not your love that they want, it is your suffering. I want to save you so much time and heartache because it took me a very long time to figure this out. Because I'm not that kind of a person. Who the hell wants suffering? But suffering has its privileges because then you become a victim. And you can tell everyone your victim sob stories and everyone's going to side you. Everyone is going to say, oh, you poor thing, poor you, you suffer so much. And that is the attention that they want. We don't want that attention. Why would we want that attention? Life is short. The kind of attention that we want is the kind of attention that uplifts us, that supports us in our spiritual journey. And that kind of attention is something that you can only get from people who understand your journey, people who support your journey, people who know what love is, people who know what a spiritual journey is, people who understand, people who appreciate that the spiritual journey is so much more important than seeking external validation. So it's Christmas Eve. Some of you are preparing for family gatherings, visits to friends' houses. And some of you may not, I wouldn't say fortunate or unfortunate, but some of you may not be celebrating because, some of you might be in no contact with your family. You might be celebrating with friends. But I just want you to know that times like these, Christmas, festive seasons, birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day, Father's Day, I understand how it feels and how triggering it is. You don't want to be reminded of what day it is. It's just 24 hours. Just wait it out. And the next day is a new day.